Good evening and welcome to the Hibs Observer post-match debrief. Here with myself, Liam Bryce, alongside Patrick McPartlin, as always, after what's effectively a much-needed 1-0 win for Hibs over Kilmarnock here at Easter Road. Sends the team into the international break on a positive note, and you feel that was kind of really important after the sort of frustration of the last few weeks. Patrick, what was your take on the 90 minutes? It wasn't a classic, was it? But it was kind of...
No,
it must.
It wasn't pretty. It wasn't. There wasn't a lot to like about the performance as a whole, but it was effective. It was, as you say, it was necessary, and it was needed for a number of reasons. I think partly for the players' confidence. Just the sort of couple of results after Aberdeen at Hampden last weekend, and then midweek losing that late goal when they were in a good position. I think it was important to kind of exercise those ghosts, and obviously you can look at it from the point of view of it's a second league win for Nick Montgomery as well, and now they have the international break to get some of those players back who they've been kind of nursing through this period, and just sort of like rest, relax, and for the ones that aren't on international duty, work on just improving the things that need improved, because there were some shaky moments today. There was some quite hairy moments. I think there were no fewer than 4 fresh air swipes during the second half alone, which I think tells you just how the game was going in terms of panic levels. But I mean, it's a results business at the end of the day, and Hibs got the 3 points. It was it's as simple as that. They needed the win. They got it.
Yeah.
End of.
We could probably actually leave it there, but we'll not. We'll crack on. I totally agree. I think it was that today was very much a kind of win by any means necessary type of affair. I think it's been a strange few weeks in terms of, I think I agree with Nick Montgomery in terms of what he was saying pre-match, that they haven't maybe always got what they deserved over the past few weeks, and he did speak after St Mirren about maybe a sort of need to learn how to win ugly. It wasn't particularly pretty today, but I think psychologically it could be important. It's just a lot has been made, and there's been a lot of discussion about kind of Hibs' inability to see games out from either a winning position or in terms of the semi-final, position of strength, on top in the game, and having a man extra on the pitch. So just to kind of have a day where they're holding on to a narrow lead and just getting that over the line, it can do wonders, I think, for your belief, because I think you could almost see at times over the past few weeks, there was a kind of jitteriness about the team when it was getting to these latter stages. They were maybe kind of losing their shape a wee bit at times, people just making bad decisions, and that kind of points to maybe something that was becoming a bit of a psychological problem. I mean, I'm not going to pretend it was completely plain sailing to get it over the line today. No. You mentioned those multiple swipes at fresh air, and it was just, there was a wee bit of anxiety about it, I thought, as we got into the closing stages. And obviously Kilmarnock were nothing to lose at that point. They were going to kind of start throwing more at it. I think you could maybe feel that anxiety a wee bit around Easter Road as well. There was it kind of was a wee bit tense and a bit tetchy around the place, and I suppose that's only natural considering what's happened in games of late. But yeah, I don't think you can underestimate the importance of just getting that kind of at least psychological boost, and it takes a team into the international break on a positive note. In terms of individuals, I think it's been a really good week for George Campbell, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think this is a player who we haven't really seen much of under Nick Montgomery. We've seen fleeting substitute appearances, and I think the kind of understanding was that the way Nick Montgomery likes to play with that 4-4-2. It's not a 4-2-4. 4-4-2. But the way he likes to play in that 4-4-2, there isn't really room for a player who, I mean, Josh Campbell's obviously used to playing in a midfield 3. I don't know if I'd necessarily call him an out-and-out central midfielder, just on the basis that he's such a versatile player that I think last season we saw him playing at right back, we saw him playing left wing back, we saw him playing defensive midfield, central midfield, attacking midfield. And the last couple of games he's effectively played as a kind of second striker. Montgomery staying true to his 4-4-2 if to a fault, if you like. He's Montgomery's had it hard. He's lost Adam Lafondre. He hasn't had Christian Doidge available. He's been having to nurse Martin Boyle through a bit of a troublesome knee injury over the last 7 days or so. So he's not had an awful lot to work with, and I think Campbell deserves a lot of credit for stepping up. Not just on Wednesday night, he gets a start, scores within 12 minutes, but then today, I mean, he's just like a bundle of energy, and I think that suits Montgomery's style of play really well. It also, I think we said this on Wednesday night, Thursday morning whenever we did the last video, that takes a lot of the pressure off Dylan Benta. And I just thought today it worked really well in terms of, we talked about the fluid front four and Montgomery's lineups, but today it was even more evident with sort of Benta and Campbell going wide, Boyle and Tavares coming central, and I mean, there's all sorts of statistical and tactical pieces we can do on the sort of slight change in shape today, but I thought Josh Campbell was at the centre of a lot of what was good about Hibs today, and in the nicest way possible. There wasn't an awful lot. They had their chances, they had opportunities, but I mean, it was ball getting stuck under players' feet, or passes being overhit. It was a little bit nervy. I think you could sense that kind of energy coming from the stands, especially late on when Kilmarnock were chucking everything in the kitchen sink at Hibs, and David Marshall had a really good save at his near post, and there was sort of bodies being thrown in the way of crosses and shots. And I do think that Hibs needed a win like this. If they'd won 5-0, it would have been obviously great. They've won 5-0, but I think the manner of such a victory against a team who they've already played under Nick Montgomery, who came back from 2 goals down to draw 2-2, I think that was really, really important in terms of the psychological boost that the players will get from that, and also just the feeling that Hibs are still a work in progress. There has been, there's a lot of good things about this team. There's certainly been improvements since Montgomery came in, but there's still a long way to go. But yeah, I think Campbell certainly is at the centre of a lot that was good on Wednesday night and again today. And obviously gives Montgomery a nice dilemma once the international break's over, of who plays in that front four. Because I think Josh Campbell has probably put himself in the reckoning for if not starting in that position, certainly coming on and being able to change the game.
Yeah, and he spoke after the game against St Mirren in midweek, and there was a kind of outright acknowledgement from him, really, that he possibly doesn't naturally fit into a lot of the kind of the positions that are available within that 4-4-2, and he talked a bit about having to find ways to offer something different that perhaps nobody else can bring to the table. And I suppose there's no better way of doing that than scoring in consecutive games, because he does have that in his game, doesn't he? He gets forward well. He certainly does. You can tell he knows where the goal is. Maybe wasn't as clean a finish today as he had against St Mirren, but again, he was there. Exactly, they all count. And it was a kind of game of few big moments, I felt. And it was always going to be so important that when your moment comes along, you need to take your chance. And he seems, quite reliable in that sense, Campbell. Opportunities come on, he's tucked it away nicely. I think it was, just come back to the game itself. It's just kind of, it's weird, almost like, I think Hibs have played better here under Montgomery and not won.
I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah. They've been better here and maybe not picked up the 3 points. I certainly think perhaps think back to the goal was strong with Dundee. I would certainly say they created more chances that day than they did here. But I think you kind of maybe need to credit Kilmarnock to an extent as well. I think they came with quite a solid game plan, and I felt there was a bit of an impasse at points, because Hibs do this where they'll start the ball. Given the goal kicks, giving it to David Marshall, and then they'll almost wait and try and draw teams onto them. Whereas what Kilmarnock were trying to do was sort of set traps, almost, that when Hibs played the ball into a certain area, then they would go and press. And it did create a bit of an impasse at times, where there was a lot of kind of lulls in the game. And I think certainly for large parts of the first half. Kilmarnock did it very well. That when the ball did go into certain areas, they were right on top of people, and it was almost kind of man marking at times.
Yeah, well, I mean, Derek McInnes said that
Yeah.
after the game, that they'd come to East Road with a very specific game plan, and apart from losing the goal, which he, as we've said, was essentially one big important moment that the Hibs took advantage of. That they were essentially getting a lot of joy from what they were doing. I mean, he's actually spoken before about not kind of turning the fans against the team, but sort of feeding off that nervous energy in the stands. That if they can force, or if his teams can force the Hibs into errors, into passes not reaching their destination, launching the ball out of play, that sort of thing, then I think they think they can get a lot of joy from that, because that nervous energy in the stands then sort of passes on to the players. Mm-hmm. They're more likely to make mistakes. They're more likely to take the safe option instead of taking risks. And I think what you've got in this Hibs team is players like Martin Boyle, and we should discuss his impact, which we will do shortly. But players like Martin Boyle, who can seize on moments like that, who can get a little bit of space, make a little turn, just pick out a player unselfishly to get that goal, just that one opening. And there were other options. I mean, there was the first half. Boyle, I think, had a bit of a penalty claim. There was obviously the offside goal early on, which, unlike the semi-final, was, I think, quite a clear and obvious case of offside. But yeah, I mean, I think we should maybe talk about Martin Boyle. He wasn't played in midweek, and I think a lot of people were questioning why he wasn't at least brought off the bench. And I think today we probably saw why Hibs were maybe not happy, but at least sort of satisfied to rest him on Wednesday because of the impact he had today. Not just in setting up the goal, but he was a sort of constant threat throughout. And Derek McInnes, I think, devoted a good chunk of his post-match remarks to how big a player Boyle is. And
remarks, I would say.
Yes, yeah. But he obviously he's benefited from having a week off, playing. Medical advice from the sort of physios at Hibs was maybe not to play him on Wednesday night if they could avoid it, which they didn't. Montgomery said before about not risking players if they're not 100%, and I think you can argue that he might have made the difference on Wednesday night if they come on, but at the same time, he could have suffered an injury and he might not have been available for today. And when you look at how important it was today, suddenly that decision in midweek looks like quite a shrewd one.
Yeah, I mean, because it was a tricky decision, because it's I think Hibs were already looking light on options in forward areas. Obviously, Adam Lafondra not involved again today. Neither was Christian Deutsch, so it's kind of it was a judgment call really with Boyle in midweek, and if they weren't, I think Montgomery sort of said it explicitly after the game, like he's not a player that we can afford to take risks with, because I think you're right. He could have played on Wednesday, could end up losing him for a longer period of time. He's had that rare breather, because he doesn't really seem to get one much, because if he's not playing for Hibs, he's off trekking the globe with Australia, so he doesn't get much chance just to kind of recharge his batteries almost. It's almost constant for a player like Boyle, but I think he's coming back in today, and I think you could see from the off that he looked quite energised. He looked as if he really did fancy it. There was obviously
very sharp.
The one he got disallowed for offside, but then he gets in again, and I've kind of not seen the one back where he goes down going one-on-one, but maybe I think I've been a bit soft if that had been awarded. Feel free to shoot me down and tell me otherwise, but certainly from our vantage point, it looked as if he maybe went down a wee bit easily. But I think you could tell that there was a big moment in Martin Boyle.
Yeah, I think he has that every game. I think that's why you play him. You don't want to risk him if he's not 100%. I think he has maybe struggled a little bit recently with having such a heavy load since he came back from that injury, because he's played a lot of minutes for Nick Montgomery. He's played a lot of minutes for Graham Arnold in Australia. He's come back. He's you've had the cup games as well as the league games, and it's. I think we said a few weeks back, or certainly I might have said this in one of our analysis pieces, that he looked a bit jaded at times. He just looked a little bit like, I mean, he was still, obviously the effort was still there, and that drive and determination. But today was different. I think he definitely benefited from that rest, and just being able to, as you say, recharge the batteries and sort of help him go into the international break on a positive. And you can see him taking that form into the Socceroos games as well. He's an important player for them as he is for Hibs. And I think you're right. He does have a big moment in him. I think in every game. I think he's and I think Derek McInnes said this. Other managers have said it as well. He's the sort of player who, if you can put two men on him to try and keep him quiet, then I think you'll do that, because he can be the difference. Between sort of 1 point and 3 points, or 1 point and no points, from Hibs' point of view. And I think he's been in the league long enough that the other managers will know know all too well about his threats and what he can bring to the side in a sort of footballing sense. But at the same time, we hear from all the other players what a big character he is in the dressing room and around the training centre. And I think if you've got a Boyle who's 100% fit and happy, then that's probably going to rub off on the rest of the squad as well. So I think it's he's obviously a key part of the squad, and we've called him a talisman before, and he certainly is that. But at the same time, the other players can feed off that, and that can make a big difference as well.
Yeah. Just to clarify, if you've not seen any of Nick Montgomery's post-match press conference, he did confirm that Boyle came through the game unscathed, so he seems to be fine. He also did add, right enough, that if it was up to him, he probably wouldn't want him going away with Australia. But I think that's just the default position for a club manager.
I think it is. It's understandable when it's a player like Martin. Like we've been saying, he is so important. But at the same time, when you consider the injuries that he's had that have kept him out of big tournaments for Australia, I think the Asian Cup a few years back, and then obviously the World Cup last year, it's hard to sort of deny him that chance. And at the same time, I mean, it's Martin Boyle. You're not going to be able to hold him down, are you? He's still find the day. So.
Even if it was in somebody's suitcase, I think he'd find a way to get himself there. Yeah, I think that's all from us post-match today. As I kind of alluded to earlier, we've got full reaction to today's game on the Hibs Observer website. That's a reaction from ourselves, from Nick Montgomery, and also reaction from Derek McInnes as well. You can watch his post-match press conference. I thought he was quite interesting on how his view of Hibs and how he wanted his Kilmarnock team to approach it today. I thought that was quite interesting as well. So that's all on the Hibs Observer website and on our YouTube channel. So yeah, as always, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll be back again soon. Cheers.